What if I told you that one of the most ridiculous duels in U.S. history not only made headlines, but actually changed how American politicians operate? Now add in some booze, male ego, a salty journalist, and terrible aim, and you've got a story that sounds like fiction, but it's all true. Today we dive into the amazing story of the duel between two congressmen, Jonathan Cilley and William Graves. It's a story of honor, politics, wounded pride, and how one stupid decision affected the way Congress works. Sound like a joke? Hold on, it's just getting started. Let's rewind to the 1830s. America was still a young country. Politicians were, let's say, less reserved. Congressional debates often turned into shouting matches, fistfights, and sometimes actual duels. And yes, I'm serious. Duels. This was a time when politics was a mix of old-world gentlemanly honor and a rough new democracy. If someone insulted your character, you didn't post about it. You challenged them to pistols at dawn. Jonathan Cilley was a congressman from Maine. Young, ambitious, smart. People thought he was a rising star in the Democratic Party. He was known for his wit and wasn't shy about roasting political rivals. He was confident, maybe too confident. And here's our second hero, William Graves, congressman from Kentucky, a member of the Whig Party, a more old-fashioned Southern idea of honor and dignity. He was an honorable gentleman and extremely resentful. When someone questioned his friends or his honor, he didn't talk. He acted. It all started because of James Watson Webb, a powerful newspaper editor. He accused a rival politician of corruption and wanted to send a letter through Cilley. Cilley said, "Nah, not my job." He didn't want to play mailman in someone else's drama. And that's where it all went wrong. Webb felt insulted. Graves, as his buddy, took it personally too. To them, this wasn't just a refusal, it was a slap in the face. And back then, slaps in the face had consequences, like rifles at 80 yards. Okay, so here's how it all spirals out of control. Remember that journalist we mentioned, James Watson Webb? He published a scathing editorial suggesting that a certain congressman was involved in corrupt financial dealings. Nothing new for DC, right? But here's the catch. Instead of addressing it directly, the targeted congressman decides to go full high school drama. He writes a very strongly worded letter and wants it delivered through a mutual acquaintance. That mutual acquaintance? Jonathan Cilley. Now, Cilley wasn't even involved in the scandal, but he takes one look at that letter and goes, "Yeah, no, I'm not getting in the middle of that," which honestly is the most relatable decision in this whole story. But refusing to deliver the letter didn't sit well with Webb or Graves. In their Southern code of honor, refusing a letter wasn't just rude, it was practically the same as calling someone a liar to their face. Graves, who, let's remember, is just a buddy trying to help deliver some drama, takes personal offense. Suddenly he feels his honor is on the line too. So what does he do? He challenges Cilley to a duel. Yes, a duel with rifles at 80 yards, because clearly nothing screams mature political discourse like trying to shoot your co-worker from half a football field away. At this point, Cilley could have just declined. But declining a duel in 1830s Washington, D.C.? That's like ghosting someone in front of their entire group chat. It's social suicide. So Cilley, possibly under pressure, possibly thinking Graves wouldn't go through with it, accepts. The whole situation is absurd. Neither man really wants to kill the other, but now they're stuck. Honor demands action, and this wasn't even about politics. It was about bruised egos, misunderstood intentions, and an outdated culture of masculinity that said, better to die than to look weak. They agree to duel on February 24th, 1838. The location, somewhere quiet and secluded near Bladensburg, Maryland, a popular dueling ground at the time. Think of it as the Waffle House parking lot of 19th century political showdowns. Each man brings his second, a referee of sorts, to negotiate terms and make sure no one cheats. Spoiler alert, the second's job is basically to not stop the madness. They load up with rifles, because apparently pistols weren't dramatic enough, and stand 80 yards apart. That's nearly the length of an NBA court. Not exactly. I can see the whites of his eyes distance. First volley, both miss. Everyone exhales. Maybe that's it. Maybe they've proven their point. Maybe cooler heads will prevail. Nope. Second volley, still nothing. These guys are not exactly sharpshooters. The only thing hurt is the grass behind them. Third volley. Cilley is hit in the leg. Or maybe it's the abdomen. Reports vary, but it's bad. Cilley collapses. He bleeds out on the dueling field, dying within minutes. And just like that, a promising young congressman is dead. Over a letter he didn't want to deliver. Word of Cilley's death spread fast, and people were not chill about it. Within hours, Washington was buzzing. By the next morning, newspapers across the country were running headlines like, "Congressman killed in duel," and "Political honor turns deadly." Citizens were shocked. I mean, imagine if two sitting congressmen today decided to settle an argument with sniper rifles in the woods. Twitter would break in half. This wasn't just gossip, it was a full-blown national scandal. William Graves, who until yesterday was just a regular old congressman from Kentucky, was suddenly public enemy number one. He didn't technically break any laws, but the court of public opinion had no such constraints. Letters poured into Congress. Editorials blasted the practice of dueling. People were furious that elected officials, who were supposed to lead with wisdom, were acting like medieval knights with unresolved daddy issues. And it wasn't just Graves who got heat. Congress itself was blamed. The public wanted answers. How could this have happened? How could something so childish be allowed, encouraged even in the halls of American power? Congress, of course, did what it always does when caught in a scandal. Panicked and formed a committee. They called witnesses, they debated policy. Some members cried on the floor, others pointed fingers. Eventually, they passed a resolution that made it illegal for congressmen to engage in duels inside the District of Columbia. Yes, you heard that right. Before this incident, there was nothing on the books stopping lawmakers from shooting each other over disagreements. Like it was just kind of a don't be dumb unspoken rule. Guess they needed to spell it out. So what happened to Graves? Well, nothing. I mean, his political career took a hit. He was censured but not expelled. He served out his term and didn't run again. It's like being disinvited from the group chat but still allowed to lurk. Was he remorseful? Kind of. He later said he regretted that things went so far, but also defended his actions as a matter of duty and honor. Which again just shows how deeply ingrained this idea of masculine pride was at the time. Jonathan Cilley's death wasn't the last duel in American politics, but it was one of the most pivotal. After his killing, the public's patience for this whole honor through homicide routine started to evaporate. You see, Americans were evolving. The frontier mentality, where you solved problems with fists or flintlocks, was giving way to a more urban, institutional kind of governance. Voters wanted stability, not shootouts. Dueling began to feel outdated, barbaric even. And while it didn't disappear overnight, Cilley's death was a turning point. In the decades that followed, dueling laws got stricter, and the practice gradually faded into the history books, where it belonged. This duel served as a wake-up call for Congress. If public servants couldn't settle disputes with words instead of weapons, maybe they shouldn't be public servants. The event sparked real conversations about the role of emotion, ego, and personal pride in the political process. For the first time, lawmakers began to seriously discuss conflict resolution mechanisms that didn't involve firearms. They even considered establishing formal codes of conduct, a radical idea at the time. In short, Cilley's death forced Congress to grow up, slowly, awkwardly, but still. So what concrete changes came from this tragedy? For starters, the District of Columbia passed new laws criminalizing duels. Not just for politicians, for anyone. That might sound like common sense now, but back then it was groundbreaking. More importantly, political parties began internalizing a new cultural norm. Public disputes should be solved with speeches, not duels. Debating skills became more valued than bravery. Which honestly makes sense. There's nothing brave about shooting a co-worker from 80 yards. Today, hardly anyone remembers Jonathan Cilley or William Graves. But among historians and policy nerds, their duel is legendary. Not for its drama, but for its ripple effect. It's a story taught in law schools and political science classes as an example of how not to manage workplace disagreements. In fact, you could argue that Cilley's death helped catalyze a long-overdue shift toward modern democratic norms in American governance. One absurd act, with surprisingly grown-up consequences. So, what does a drunken, ego-driven duel in 1838 have to do with modern politics? A lot more than you'd think. Sure, today's politicians aren't challenging each other to duels at dawn, although admit it, you'd pay to see C-SPAN if they did. But the same basic ingredients are still there. Pride, image, reputation, and a refusal to back down. We've just traded pistols for Twitter threads and cable news sound bites. What the Cilley-Graves duel really shows us is how much of politics then and now is performance. They weren't fighting over policy, they weren't defending voters, they were performing for their peers, their parties, their egos. That still happens today. Ever seen a politician pick a public fight just to score points? Same energy, different weapons. It's all about the optics. Always has been. Cilley didn't need to die, Graves didn't need to shoot, but neither man was willing to look weak. And that's where the danger lies. History is full of moments where someone chose pride over peace, and the world paid the price. Cilley's death is just a microcosm of that pattern. It's a cautionary tale. If you build a system where saving face matters more than saving lives, bad things happen. Sometimes in a field outside Washington, sometimes on a much bigger stage. Think about it. How many political feuds today are less about substance and more about spectacle? The duel reminds us what happens when conflict becomes entertainment, when outrage is a brand, when people confuse strength with aggression. It's a mirror and not a flattering one. And while no one's loading rifles anymore, we're still very much capable of wounding each other with words, policies, and inaction. So the real question is, have we actually evolved? Or just changed the weapons? Let's not forget what this story is really about. One man died because two others couldn't back down. One moment of misjudged honor created ripple effects through Congress, the law, and even public expectations of leadership. That bullet didn't just kill Jonathan Cilley. It killed an era of politics ruled by brute masculinity and unchecked ego. And that might have saved a few more lives down the road. This isn't just trivia. It's not just a weird moment from a dusty history book. It's a reminder that real change often comes from real tragedy. Sometimes systems don't evolve because someone had a brilliant idea. They evolve because something terrible happened, and people finally said never again. The Cilley Graves duel became that never-again moment for political violence in Congress. So what did we learn? Politics used to be even messier than it is now. Honor culture sounds cool until someone bleeds out. Ego is timeless, but dueling, thankfully, is not. And sometimes one absurd moment can spark necessary change. Jonathan Cilley isn't a household name, but maybe he should be. Because without his needless death, Congress might have taken a lot longer to grow up. If you enjoyed this wild ride through forgotten American history, go ahead and smash that like button. Subscribe for more stories they don't teach in school, and ring the bell so you never miss an upload. We've got a whole archive of weird, wild, and way too real historical moments coming your way. What's the most ridiculous historical story you've ever heard? Drop it in the comments, maybe it'll be our next episode. And hey, next time you're in a heated debate, maybe skip the rifle and just send a funny meme instead.